Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Future Hacker. I'm your host, Maria Taiji, and today we're talking to Linda Ahrgren. Linda's passion is growing and developing startups to scaleups with a purpose that matters. She's currently the CEO of Assently that offers secure e-signatures and e-identification. So the topic today is regulations technologies. Hi, Linda. It's so great to have you with us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing quite all right, actually. I just got through my corona. So I'm actually very happy that we can have this pod today. And thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm so glad you're doing better. So for everyone, just as you know, she got it a while ago and we kept rescheduling. So I wanted to make sure that she would be fine for the interview. But you went through a very tough time, right?
Yes, I think maybe some other people had worse times, but it's over now, so it's good.
So, Linda, the reg tech market is growing really fast. And the recent race for digitalization is surely this huge factor, right? So I like to cover with you the main components around this market, as well as understand how's technology playing a part in that. So that's the first time we're covering regulations tech. Let's begin with the always increasing number of fraudulent activities. And, Brazil is surely a big candidate for, frauds. As people adopt digitalization in their daily lives, it seems that scams and frauds are getting ahead of us, more creative and more professionalized than ever before. At least I can speak for Brazil. It's just amazing how scammers are getting creative, and even people that are really aware, they end up almost getting caught or even getting caught. It's just getting too easy to fall into scams for both companies and people. Could you share the most common frauds out there and how could we be more aware and protected?
Yes, you're so right that it's increasing. It's almost like an avalanche. And it is easy to get tricked, and it is easier for these fraudists to also commit the fraud in this digital age. I mean, if you compare it with hacking someone's computer or breaking into a house or something, it's so much easier to do this social engineering, which means that they trick you to submit some information because they know exactly, what kind of buttons to push. So that is actually quite scary that it's also so easy for them to trick us. I'm not sure 100%, worldwide what's the most common fraud, but here in the Northern Europe, it's very common when it comes to, buying things online. The online shopping has increased so much. But because of maybe where we are today or at this point, I think it's also worth mentioning that actually Corona has also been a factor to the increase of the frauds. I think what is so scary and what's so terrible is that these fraudists, if you can say so, they play on our worries and they play on our fears and our thirst for important information about the current situation, which almost breaks my heart. And I think we, as a private person, you have to be aware of that, but also as a business, I'm not sure how it is in Brazil, but here in Sweden, we're working from home. And it was quite, all these new directions, they came so suddenly, so immediately. And maybe, we didn't think about how to adapt because, when you're working from home, you don't have the same kind of infrastructure as when you work in the office. You don't have this shield or this shell because you're not sitting in this kind of network security environment. So that is something which these fraudists, they of course take advantage of that. And maybe also you as an employer, maybe you're more concerned about that everyone should, work as normal, deliver and have a high speed in their production. So maybe you're a bit more flexible when it also comes to these controls which you had in the office or which you have before Corona. So I think this is something which is quite worrying. But at the same time, I think it's quite easy for, employers to improve this kind of situation. And it's not only, these technical tools and such, which you should think about. Maybe the first thing is just to make your people who work with you, maybe you should just make them aware, that you don't have the same infrastructure as in the office. Please don't think so. And therefore, just think about the normal things. Don't open the links, don't open the attachments which you don't recognize. But I think that as an employer, you have to remind your people about this. You have to ensure that the employees, that they are familiar with these routines or the policies, etc. And also, I think as an employer, maybe you also have to ensure that they have this, easy access to the IT support, because maybe you can think about it yourself, If you have easy access to them, then you ask them. But if you don't have easy access to them, maybe you don't feel that you have the time to actually ask them, and you do shortcuts. That is also something, which is quite risky. So I think that a lot of frauds right now are also increasing because of the corona, which is quite scary, I think. Other thing which we noticed, at least here in Europe, is that also it has affected the elderly, because they have been, isolated for quite some time. They are already a vulnerable group, and now during corona, they are even more vulnerable. And maybe the frauds, they take advantage of this situation as well. And, elderly, they receive SMS or they receive emails where they are asked to, for example, provide information so that they can learn about when they will get their vaccinations and such. There are just so many things related to the corona, which is quite scary when it comes to the fraudsters. But in general, if we don't think about the corona, but in general, if you're just like a private person, then I think what's noticeable is that for some reason, although we know that the frauds are increasing and that they are really clever, we know about social engineering, we know about phishing, etc. For some reason, although we know these statistics, we don't change our habits. And that is also something which is important to notice or think about. And I think that we as private people, if we just spend like 30 minutes and we think about what kind of preventative measures we should take, then I think that investment is something that is so worthwhile. And that can just be, the normal things. You ensure that your virus protection is updated, and you ensure that you use a trusted operator, etc., etc. The things that we actually already know about, but for some reason we don't act upon it.
No, you're so right. You just said that, and I opened my antivirus tool right now, and I put it to check if there's any updates. But that's the thing, because you're so right when you say that there are so many easy measures to take, but people just caught up on all the daily tasks and everybody got so overloaded. And the companies, they had to figure out a way of having everybody having computer and a space, and they just leave it for the next step, leaving this a gap for people that have bad intentions to act. And for regular people, this is something that we have to be constantly being reminded of. Beware of clicking on links and answering messages for unknown people. And there's just simple steps, right? At the same time, identity and control management plays such an important role in protecting us against fraud. So besides everything you mentioned and the, simple antivirus that we're supposed to have on our PCs. So regarding identity, what's out there for this sector today? And how do you see this evolving?
I think what's out there is maybe something which can be used even more. It's something which is called like multi-factor authentication. Basically, you have to show more than once that you are you. And these things are already out there, and I just think that it will be 100% necessary. But what I think maybe is not out there everywhere, at least in the world, is that, for example, this VPN solution is very insecure solution because you show evidence once and then you get access to everything, right? You become part of like some corporate network or something and you feel safe. But what's getting more and more common is like a new principle, you can say. And the principle is that you cannot trust anyone, anything. So you have to show or give evidence that you are you. If you need to access some kind of important, it can be business applications or whatever. But it's a new principle, which means that you always have to authenticate yourself in that kind of way. And that's a bit different, I think, from before. But I think it will definitely be the solution, how it will evolve. And then, I mean, if you look at how things will evolve more in the future, then, of course, you know, machine learnings will be there. I think we will rely even more on biometrics, but machine learnings, I'm not super good with machine learnings, but they can basically help you to analyze these really complex patterns of the user behavior. And when it comes to biometrics also provide like not only fingerprints and face scanning and such, but it's also provide, you know, behavioral biometrics. So these things I think will be super important in the future. And once again, I think new areas will have to think about how to protect themselves because now I'm talking about Corona again, but I think more people will work from home after Corona. And also just the fact that people demand from employers to work in different kind of locations, you know, in coffee shops, or it can be if you're traveling somewhere, etc. So messaging and video conferencing, we use that more frequently. And I think also these fraudists, they will take advantage from that. So the control management, I think a lot of things are already out there. We just have to ensure that we use it.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. A lot of tools out there, but maybe the culture of making the correct use of it still needs to be improved. Besides security, new policies like data privacy and user information protection and companies operating across multiple jurisdictions are causing this huge increase in the cost of compliance. So what are the main factors that cause the cost increase, and which technologies are out there to make this process more efficient?
I think actually you mentioned the main factors. I think the fintech revolution, or it has accelerated. So it's changed the finance sector a lot. This industry has become so much faster and agile, and they have increased connectivity, and also they are penetrating deeper into digital solutions across every global market. And this is like disrupting verticals like never before. So the global finance industry, they are faced with new challenges. And also the fact that they are so global, you can also say that they are faced with a very complex regulatory landscape. And all these things demands resources. Sometimes I get the impression that maybe also the laws, they don't really keep up with this high pace of development within the financial industry.
That's a great point. The legal part needs to keep up, right?
Yes. And I think, you know, sometimes maybe it's very hard for them because there is a gray zone also between, you know, private and business. I mean, for example, nowadays you rent apartments from a private person, or you take an Uber instead of a taxi. So everything becomes kind of blurry, and also these defined lines are not there anymore. So it is hard for the law maybe to keep up. It was not that long time ago where the finance industry started with tech for payments only. And now suddenly, you know, crowdfunding out there, companies, they are increasing and such. So everything is moving so fast. So I think that this complex landscape is what costs so much money. And then also, of course, new regulatory requirements. In Europe, it's like there are European payments directives, and everyone, you know, had to adapt to the GDPR and such. So I think there is also a lot of new regulations, and therefore compliance has become very costly for, many within the finance industry. But I think that also, at least here in the Northern Europe, they have also embraced or they have changed attitude, like authorities, supervisory authorities, they have changed attitude towards new technologies. So to solve this cost increase for the financial industry, they are actually open to introduce artificial intelligence or machine learning. They are not replacing, the compliance department, the traditional one, but they are complementing it for more more manual work, like transaction monitoring, a typical example where artificial intelligence is very useful. But what's done is that they are encouraging the segment to coexist with the technology. So I think that there is also a solution to this cost increase. The compliance department coexist with these new technologies. And then I think it will be cheaper, but also that we will be able to, combat, for example, money laundering and such. I think the solution is there.
That's great, Linda. Thank you so much. We're going to end this episode right now, but in the next episode, stay tuned. We're getting more into the technology solutions and what the future looks like for this specific segment. Stay tuned, everybody.
Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.